Cracktober continues, and today I'm trying 3 slow cooker recipes from the 1970s. I'm cooking from the Unwatched pot. This book was originally published in 1975, and I'll talk more about it a little bit later. I feel like whenever I make slow cooker recipes on my channel, I always have several people in my comments who say something like, you know, when I got married in whatever year, I received 3 crockpots as wedding gifts. So when I got married in the early 2000s, I actually got 2 crockpots as wedding gifts. So they continue to be popular. I wanted to try a few recipes from a book and see how they work in a modern day crockpot. Today, it's a little bit chilly outside and I'm very excited about it. So I'm kicking things off with a soup. This soup, in fact, ham and broccoli chowder. And once again, I'm using my favorite 2-quart slow cooker, and I'm actually making the full recipe of this soup today. There was an indication in the recipe that you could double it for a 6-quart slow cooker, so I hope it's gonna work in this one. It says to mix flour and milk in slow cooker. A small can of evaporated milk, and it indicates a small can. They still make small cans, so this is what I got. This one is 5 ounces. Yeah, this book in particular does not indicate like this ounce can of whatever, or this much frozen broccoli. It's like a small package, a package. So I'm doing my best to kind of get the right amounts here in some cases. So 1 small can of evaporated milk. Does anyone else feel like they use the most evaporated milk of the year in the fall and winter? That's the way it is for me. I usually have some in my pantry, but most of the time I don't use it until this time of year. So in addition to that small can of evaporated milk, I have 2 tablespoons of flour, and I have a small whisk that I'm going to use to mix that together. I think that's well mixed enough. Add other ingredients except cream. Very, very common for a slow cooker recipe to just be like, put everything else in there. That's why we like them, right? So I have a package of frozen broccoli. I used a 12-ounce package, and I did cut it up into smaller pieces. You can buy it already in small pieces, but I didn't. So I cut them up. I just prefer them to be a little bit more bite-sized. I have 2 cups of water, 2 cups of diced ham. This would be a great recipe to make if you have leftover ham. I'm gonna give that a little stir to get things going. Flour, milk, ham, broccoli. I have a 1/4 cup of very finely minced onion, and also a cup of grated Swiss cheese. Sounds like it's gonna be so good and so right for today. I think it's in the high 50s at the moment, which is just wonderful. I'm so sorry if you are having warmer weather and you would like it to be cooler. It's up there, it's full, but it's fitting. I have all of the ingredients that need to be in there for the time being. Once it's cooked, you add some cream to the mix and, you know, mix it together and let it heat up. But speaking of that, we need to talk about cook times. Many of you already know this, but in case you don't, these recipes are from 1975, and I have a modern slow cooker here. The slow cookers back in the 70s, they cooked things at a lower temperature than the slow cookers that we have today. These cook at a higher temperature. When you're using recipes from the past like this in a slow cooker that's modern, you do need to keep a little bit more of an eye on things. So the cook time in the book says cook on low for 7 hours or on automatic for 4 hours. So what automatic means from my understanding is that you start things out on a high temperature, and then the slow cooker will switch to a lower temperature after a certain amount of time. I think I'm going to cook this on low, but I don't think it's going to take that full 7 hours. I think it's always really a good idea to test some of these older slow cooker recipes before you decide to make them and kind of like really walk away from them, because there's a good chance that they're gonna cook a little bit faster. So I'm gonna cover this up and I'm gonna cook it on low. I'll be checking it every couple of hours probably, just to keep an eye on things. But now that I have this started, I think I'm gonna go and do a little bit of recipe planning for some of my upcoming videos. So I like to read cookbooks and do my recipe planning while getting comfy in bed. You can see I have my little basket of cookbooks that I'm currently working with at the moment, and my Brooklinen bedding makes my bed extra cozy. I've been a Brooklinen customer for years and I absolutely love their products, so I'm very excited to be working with them on this portion of the video. As you can see, I like to keep the decor in my bedroom very simple. I love white sheets, I love a white duvet. It kind of makes me feel like I'm staying in a fancy hotel. But Brooklinen has a variety of styles and colors to fit anyone's tastes. I love Brooklinen's Luxe Sateen sheets and duvet, and they come in over 20 colors and patterns, including white. I sleep on these sheets every single night and they are so smooth and also very light and breathable. I'm what you would call a hot sleeper, but these sheets keep me cool and comfortable all year round. Brooklinen's hardcore bundle includes a core sheet set, extra pillowcases, and a duvet cover. And you could save a lot of money by bundling items instead of purchasing them individually. If you're ready to check out Brooklinen, you can save 15% by using the link in my description down below. And don't forget, you can save even more when you bundle. All right, now I have some planning to do. I'm just over 4 hours in on the soup and it smells really good. Like I can smell it cooking and I think we're ready for the final step. Let's see. The onions look cooked. The broccoli definitely looks cooked. The next step is to add some light cream to this and then I just have to let it heat through. So maybe I'll let it go for like, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. Oh, we're all the way to the top there, huh? Give it a stir and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've let this heat with that cream in there for like 20-25 minutes and it looks like it's ready to go. Before I dish it up, I am gonna taste it as is because there's no salt or pepper in here. I know the ham is very salty, but I just kind of want to double check it and see if it needs something. Well, you know, it's a good thing to do. Yeah, I'm stirring it. It looks a little thin, I'm not gonna lie, but it does look somewhat smooth. I think it needs salt. I do. Let me just add a bit here. It's like almost there. The flavor is almost there, but I think salt would help. Grabbed a new spoon here. I probably put like a teaspoon or so of salt in there. That is so much better. Oh yeah, that's better. Like a lot. Okay, so let's talk about this soup. It tastes good now. Didn't taste bad before. But that extra little like teaspoon of salt really improved it. It was a little bit bland before I did that. Also, as I mentioned, it's like a little thin. I guess I kind of, you know, I mean, what was I expecting? I wasn't really making like a full kind of like white saucy kind of cream soup. I feel like I've had soup that was very similar to this before. And although it is a little bit thinner, the taste is there. So I think it's okay. To recap on the cook time for this, originally the book said to cook on low for 7 hours. I cooked it for like just over 4 on low and it was fine. Before I added the cream, it did seem like a little clumpy or something. So I think that the addition of the cream actually helped it quite a bit to kind of smooth out. I added the cream and then I let it go for another like 25-ish minutes or so. Very tasty, not a super thick soup, but I do enjoy it. I like the combination of the broccoli and the ham together. I thought the spinach casserole looked really delicious and I knew that I had to give it a try. And I really must be on a spinach casserole kick because I've recently made another one in my 1960s side dishes video. I'll link that video in the description down below if you haven't watched it yet. So, slow cooker spinach casserole. It sounds pretty good to me. There are noodles in it and that like just kind of bumps it up even more. But anyway, let's get going. It just says cook noodles until just slightly tender and drain. That is what I did. The package directions said to cook these for 10 minutes. I think I cooked them for about 7. And, you know, I drained them and they're gonna go right into my little slow cooker. And next it says 1 package of frozen spinach thawed. So it's one of those cookbooks that just says 1 package of this, but it doesn't indicate the size of the package. I know from my recent frozen vegetables video that often packages of frozen spinach came in 10-ounce portions. Sometimes it was more. It wasn't always 10 ounces. But I have a feeling they meant 10 ounces because the full recipe, you're supposed to use 2 of those packages, right? I'm cutting it in half. I do that all the time. So what I do have is a 12-ounce package of frozen spinach that I've thought a bit. I'm just gonna use the whole thing. I could definitely measure out 10 ounces. I don't think the extra 2 ounces of spinach is gonna be too bad. But yeah, I've seen, you can still get 10-ounce packages of frozen spinach. Sometimes I've seen 12 ounces, I've seen 16 ounces. I'm gonna dump that into, I'm just gonna toss that together a little. Yeah, it doesn't look like an overpowering amount of spinach with those extra 2 ounces. I think it's gonna be okay. Next, I have some chopped onion. This is 1/4 cup since I am cutting the recipe in half. And for me, that was about like half of a smallish medium kind of onion. And it says some grated cheddar or Swiss cheese. I opted for cheddar because that is what I have on hand at this moment. And this is half a cup of finely grated cheddar cheese. And butter or margarine, 2 tablespoons. I measured out 2 tablespoons and then I cubed it up so that it kind of gets distributed throughout the casserole. Just a little pinch of nutmeg. And it says a can of condensed cream of mushroom soup. And you're thinking, what is this? This looks like cream of mushroom soup that has gone off. It's not. It is golden mushroom soup. And it's half a can. I froze the rest of it. I do that sometimes when I cut recipes in half. I just have this in my pantry and I would like to use it up. This is kind of that time of year for me where I do like to really take a look at what's in my freezer and my pantry and kind of pull some things to the front and get them used up, mostly to make room for what's to come for like the holidays and maybe like winter stock up and stuff like that. So this is not technically cream of mushroom soup. This is more of a beefy mushroom soup. I'm gonna give it a try and see how it is in this casserole. I try to stick to these recipes about 90%, and I am making a little bit of a substitution for this one, so we'll see how it is. I might have discovered something amazing, we don't know. I'm just gonna give this a very sort of like gentle stir. I mostly don't wanna break up those noodles. And you might be asking, like, why don't you just put the noodles in the slow cooker raw? Well, the recipe indicates to like cook them slightly. And I know there are recipes out there where you can put macaroni, pasta, or noodles into your slow cooker without cooking it. When I have tried some of those recipes anyway, the pasta or noodles, they just take on an unusual texture that I don't love. So I like to cook them at least a little part of the way before I put them in a slow cooker. And maybe there's a recipe out there that isn't like that. And if you have one, send it to me. I'm excited about this one. I love spinach, I love noodles, I love casseroles. This has everything, doesn't it? So that is what it is looking like inside the slow cooker. Made a nice little amount. The full recipe, it says makes 8 servings, so this is going to be 4 servings. That brings us to cook time. I am going to sort of base my cook time off of what is listed here, but I am going to keep a really sharp eye on things because, you know, these tend to be a little bit hotter than those older slow cookers. I'm going to cover this up, and it says cook on high for an hour, then switch to low for 4 to 5 hours, or you can cook on automatic for 3 to 4 hours. I'm gonna go for the cook on high for an hour. We're gonna start with that. I don't know that we're gonna need that full 3 to 4 hours on low, so we'll see. Cook this for an hour on high and about an hour and 45 minutes on low. And originally the cook time said 3 to 4 hours on low, I believe. I think this looks done to me. I'm gonna show you. Mostly what I'm looking for is cooked onions. Ooh, we're steaming up. As I mentioned, this slow cooker, this modern slow cooker is probably gonna cook a little bit differently than a slow cooker in the 1970s. I'm just gonna get a little bit here. Smells pretty good, smells pretty good. And there's nice like mushrooms from the soup. Like the pieces of mushrooms in the golden mushroom soup are bigger than like your typical cream of mushroom. Gotta get the noodle. I love noodles and I love spinach. I think it tastes pretty good. I know it tastes different, slightly different than it would with a cream of mushroom soup. I think it's pretty good with the golden mushroom soup though. And the noodles are cooked well. They're not totally mushy, which I like. You know, they're just right. I cooked them, I think I said like 7 minutes before putting them in the slow cooker. I was gonna say this is a good side dish. I mean, you can make it into a main dish, I think, because it has like the noodles. I think maybe I would add more mushrooms. You know, a buttery breadcrumb topping doesn't hurt anything, does it? But as it stands, according to the recipe, I think it's pretty tasty and a little bit different. So I'm gonna make something that I do not often make in a slow cooker. And in fact, I don't think I've ever made anything like this on my channel. I'm gonna make a dessert, and that dessert is rice pudding. I like rice pudding a lot. I think it is very warm and cozy, or you can eat it cold, of course, too, but I think it's kind of appropriate for the season, right? I've never made rice pudding in the slow cooker. I started by greasing the crock, like the liner of my slow cooker. And it just says, combine all ingredients in cooker and mix thoroughly. That is very typical of a slow cooker recipe. So I am making the full recipe for this rice pudding. So I have 2.5 cups of cooked rice that I prepared last night, and I just put it in the refrigerator. Just gonna kind of break that apart a little bit. It started to stick together in the fridge. So as for the rest of the ingredients, I'm not just gonna dump absolutely everything in here because I have a mix of evaporated milk and eggs and some things like that. I think the eggs and the milk would do a little bit better if I mix them together beforehand. I mean, you are supposed to beat the eggs before you put them in here. I don't know, something makes me think it would be better if I just like mix them together. So I've got a bowl, a butterfly gold bowl, and I have 3 eggs and 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. And I also have a teaspoon of vanilla, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, and half a teaspoon of cinnamon. So let's start with that. I feel like I'm making French toast. Kind of am. I mean, the custard part of it smells really good already. I'm gonna try to be careful and not spill. So I also have 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar and half a cup of raisins. It said you could use raisins or dates. I thought the dates sounded pretty interesting, but I don't have any on hand. So if this works out and I make it again, I'll probably try dates next time. Also, my raisins are a little dried out. I think that's fine. It's gonna work in my favor because they're gonna cook in this liquid and, you know, plump up a little bit. Okay, final ingredient is 3 tablespoons of butter. You could use butter or margarine. I cubed it up so it kind of like mixes in a little bit, right? If I just put 1 big lump of butter in there, it'd probably be okay too, but I don't know. Cubing it up makes me feel better. So I'm gonna just give that one final mix, make sure everything is incorporated. So it says to cook this on low for 4 to 6 hours. And of course I am gonna keep a bit of an eye on it, and I will report back on how long it actually took to cook in a modern day slow cooker, but I am so excited to give this a try when it's done. Here is a little peek at the rice pudding about 2 hours in. This took less time than it said to in the book. I expected that, but will you look at how nice and toasty brown this looks? And it smells incredible. I wish you could be here to smell this because it's unreal. It's so good. Very fall, very fall. I have a little bit here. Can't wait to taste it. I did let this cool because it's so piping hot when you first, you know, turn it off or whatever and take off the lid. So I did let this cool for like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, something like that. Oh my gosh, that is so delicious and warm. I was a little worried. I thought the amount of nutmeg added was a little much, but it's not. You know, it's not overly nutmeg. It's just got like that cinnamony, nutmeggy, like warm spice flavor, but not in an overpowering way. And it's sweet, but it's not overly sweet either. It's kind of like caramelized. If you like rice pudding, I think you should try this. I think you're really gonna enjoy it. The Unwatched Pot was originally published in 1975, and it coincides with a time when slow cookers were really starting to enter homes here, and they were just getting really, really popular. As I mentioned at the beginning of my video, I always hear people say, I got this many slow cookers for a wedding gift when I got married, especially if those folks got married in like the 70s or the 80s. Very popular gift, still a popular gift, of course. The first thing I wanted to point out, I just love this very colorful, sorry about the glare, illustration on the front. You know, you have the slow cooker, you've got the vegetables. I have seen this exact slow cooker with that like brick pattern before, you know, in thrift stores and things like that. I think that is so fun. The book opens with a lot of information, just the history of slow cooking, introduction to slow cooking and like reasons why you should give it a try. Freedom, low and slow, economy, energy saving, flavor, convenience, all of those good things. We go into this other section and it's all about different situations, and then it suggests recipes to go with those situations. So like if you have company coming, it suggests veal roast with rosemary, chicken tetrazzini, or duck calcutta. There's also a couple of recipes that are for it says busy day bonuses. So I think these are just like extra long cooking. And it's the suggested recipes are oxtail and barley soup, basic pot roast, veal and peppers, and a lima ham dinner. So lots of, you know, different situations and suggested recipes. I think that's very helpful. And then still more information. There's a good like 15 to 20 pages of additional information besides recipes in this book. We've got a use and care section, safety, just a list of things that you should know. Wow, everything. So there's no photographs of the food in here, but we do have some very nice illustrations, mostly I think at the beginning of each chapter. So I'll show you a few of those now. They are in this like dual color, like black and gold, which usually I see like a black and red, but so I think this is a very interesting color, kind of a goldenrod, I guess, reflective of the time in some ways. You know, you have the harvest gold, the avocado green, what were some other, there was a brown, I know. There you have the opening illustration to the breakfast chapter of this book. So they do really have a little bit of everything in here. And soups, I mean, soups are just one of the best things to cook in a slow cooker, right? That's why I chose to cook one. There's the beef, and they have individual sections for each type of meat. And there's a poultry one in here too. There's the poultry. And then quite possibly my favorite illustration from the inside of this book is the opening illustration for the desserts chapter. I think it's so cute. I love this bouquet, this like very whimsical bouquet of flowers. I love this coffee pot as well. It looks like a pattern I would own myself. I think it's perfect and like, again, very reflective of this time. That kind of takes us through the book itself. Let's talk about the recipes that I made today. So I started with a ham and broccoli chowder. It was perfect for the day that I made it. It was in the 50s when I started making the soup. I did make the full recipe, which says 6 servings. I would say that's about right. That's about right. I'm giving some of this away to a friend, and then I'll also have some for like additional lunches and things like that. So it makes a good amount. I will say that they're not 6 teeny tiny little servings. They're pretty sizable. Very delicious. As I mentioned, it is a thinner soup. It says that it's a ham and broccoli chowder. When I think of a chowder, sometimes I think of it as more of like a heartier, thicker kind of soup. I keep calling it ham and broccoli soup because it's thinner. Like that's what comes to mind for me rather than chowder. So when I looked over the ingredients in this recipe, I noticed that they just had like a cup of Swiss cheese, and I was a little bit worried about it, only because it didn't seem like the recipe did a lot to sort of like bring that cheese in so that it wouldn't just melt in the liquid. And in fact, when you complete like the first part of the cooking, those first several hours before you add that light cream, it is, when I said it was clumpy, that's what it was. It meant that there were pieces of melted cheese in there. Once I added the cream and I heated it through and I kind of whisked it up a little bit, that is when things came together to form like an actual soup. It's kind of like one of those recipes where you're like, oh no, I'm very worried about this, especially after investing this many hours so far, but it does all come together in the end, and it is very tasty. I like the taste of like ham and broccoli together, and although there is cheese in this soup, there's Swiss cheese, it's not like an overly cheesy soup, you know, like a broccoli cheese soup. This is really definitely like a cream of broccoli soup. Highly recommend, especially with the colder temperatures coming. And then I tried a recipe for spinach casserole, and I must really love spinach casseroles because I just made one recently in my 1960s side dishes video. This one was a little bit different though. It had noodles in it. It slow cooked for a longer amount of time. It wasn't something that you just cooked in a pan. And I opted to substitute a golden mushroom soup for the cream of mushroom soup, which was really good. You know, I mentioned just kind of jokingly, oh, I might have discovered something amazing. We don't know. Well, I know now, and it was pretty dang good. I would like to try it again with just traditional cream of mushroom soup just to see. But I think the golden mushroom soup really like made it something a little bit different. This could very easily be made into a main dish. It is in the like accompaniments, like side dish chapter of this book. I mean, I ended up eating it for lunch the next day. I try to report back to you as much as possible on how the recipes reheat the next day because I do often end up with leftovers even though I cut the recipes down. And this reheated beautifully. The noodles didn't get too soft, you know, they stayed a nice texture, and it was really great the next day for lunch. Anything with noodles in it, I'm pretty much in. And then finally, I tried a recipe for rice pudding, and oh, am I glad that I did. It was so good. I've never made rice pudding in the slow cooker before, but I think this is like the way to go for rice pudding for sure, because it got nice and brown and toasty and caramelized, and it wasn't overly sweet either. It was just a nice, pleasant sweetness. Looking at the ingredients, I mean, this is stuff that most of the time I have these things on hand. I've really been enjoying recipes like that lately where these are like, oh, these are pantry staples. You know, I have rice, I have brown sugar, I have all these seasonings, evaporated milk and eggs and things like that. Like I typically have that stuff. So this is a great dessert for me to just kind of put together from things that I have on hand. It was so nice to eat that on a cool day. It was great cold as well. The next day, I enjoyed it a lot. I'm definitely gonna make it again. All of the recipes I made were really delicious, really good, But out of all of them, I think this one was the most pleasant surprise to me because I've never made it before, and I just rarely make desserts in my slow cooker, which I'm gonna have to change because this worked out beautifully. I'd like to thank Brooklinen for kindly sponsoring this video. If you'd like to check them out, you can use the link in my description down below to save 15%. If you like slow cooker recipes, I have an entire playlist and I'll link it in the description down below. I'd like to say a big thank you to my Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to join us over there, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can do that. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.